Welcome back to Give Me Five with Jones and Eli. And today we have a very special guest pod, our third ever. A man, a myth, a legend, a very wise man, our advisor, our great friend, Todd Smith, commonly known as Smitty. And today, Smitty is here to talk about something very near and dear to his heart, very near and dear to all of our hearts. He actually turned us on to fantasy football. And now we ask you, Smitty, who is the best fantasy football player in recent memory?
All right. There's one clear answer. Recent memory, fantasy football, the guy who just literally set the bar for what fantasy football is today. Probably had in one season alone in 2006, I think, had a Hall of Fame season just there alone that probably would have given him a gold jacket before, even if he never played one more season. We could talk about the Priest Holmes of the world from Kansas City. We could talk about Marshall Faulk and actually Steven Jackson from Los Angeles Rams, who were, reception machines. The one dude, though, LaDainian Tomlinson. LaDainian Tomlinson, San Diego Chargers, absolute legend, Hall of Famer, greatest fantasy football player of all time, probably has the most points ever scored in one season. 33 touchdowns in one season of football. He was catching balls, running balls. If everybody saw footage of him, he would just go airmail right over the line, scoring touchdowns. Had the classic sort of hands the ball over, dab. He probably created the dab before the dab was even cool. So LaDainian Tomlinson, with what he achieved, he also had a total, idiot quarterback who couldn't run his way out of a wet paper bag in Philip Rivers. So ultimately, Tomlinson was just the man. Too good. So,
yeah, well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you bring up Tomlinson. Obviously, before this came on, did a little bit of research, looked into some of those amazing fantasy football seasons, and at the top of the list, you saw the top three, top five. LT was 3, 4 of those top five. But I'm going to go with a newer guy, a guy that you know very well. You used to have him on your team every single year, and that's Todd Gurley, Smitty. This guy, in his prime, I know he didn't invent fantasy football in the same way that Tomlinson maybe did, as you said. But Gurley, you could draft Gurley at 1-1, and you're guaranteed at least 20, 30 points a game. And you just don't have that kind of consistency at all in the game anymore. A lot of times now, I feel like the pick 101 automatically is doomed to go down with an injury third game of the season. I feel like that's happened in 5 of the last 6 years or whatever. I feel like it is interesting that you bring up these kind of older seasons, because I know Gurley's not as old. He's still, in the last 10 years, but I do feel like that kind of durability, that kind of consistency that you got from these workhorse power running backs, it doesn't really exist anymore.
No, yeah. That Tomlinson year, just so you know, 2006, I think, for literally at that time, there's 16 games, not the additional 17th game we now have. Tomlinson literally went over, I think, 31, 32 points a game for all 16 games. He didn't average that. He literally had, if you go back and look at stats, he literally, imagine having that dude. Now instead I'm playing Najee Harris for my team, who I get excited he has 6.2. Christ.
That's insane. Tomlinson, definitely one of the best to ever do it. Gentlemen, I want to throw a name in the ring. Give me Shady McCoy. Let me paint you a picture. It's Monday Night Football. You're down by 25, but you have that man Shady McCoy blackout at the link. You know he's putting up 30 for you. He was a dog back in the day. Shifty as ever, Smitty. I would say better than Le'Veon Bell.
Well, dude, Le'Veon Bell, I'd agree with that. But Le'Veon Bell also decided try to go to Gang Green for $3 more than the Steelers wanted him. That did a lot for his career. These running backs, man, them trying to get that next contract. You saw Gurley. Gurley's the one who basically got that next contract and then disappeared quicker than, Casper the Friendly Ghost. Never saw him again. Le'Veon Bell gets the money from the Jets, all of a sudden disappears into football abyss. Actually just came out, I think, 3 weeks ago, apologizing how basically leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, leaving the Rooney family, ruined his career, a mistake he should never have made because he was a Hall of Fame trajectory running back.
I mean, running backs, it's pretty obvious now that running backs don't have that kind of same longevity and loyalty necessarily to one team. Let's talk then, on the other side of it, let's go to wide receivers. We've had some great wide receivers over the last decade, 2 decades, whatever. None come to mind. I mean, obviously the first one that comes to mind is Antonio Brown, but I'm going to go away from the Steelers. We've had enough Steelers talk on this pod. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's go DeAndre Hopkins. This was a guy, I know he's still playing, but prime DeAndre Hopkins on Houston regularly, no matter who they had at quarterback, he was putting up 20, 25 points every single game, touchdowns, 100-yard receiving games, especially in PPR. Hopkins was a dog.
All right, that's fine. But once again, Elias, like, great answer, but you're wrong. One dude has stood alone in the last couple years in fantasy football in terms of wide receiver ranks, and that's Cooper Kupp. What Cooper Kupp did 2 years ago with over 145 receptions, close to 2,000 yards. I think he had like 22 touchdowns. That was the highest production out of a wide receiver since the days of Jerry Rice, who basically owned San Francisco in that entire, like, he's got Joe Montana and Steve Young throwing to him. Kupp's years blew away anything. I know I'm saying, but you're just talking about one season of play for like who had the greatest season.
No, no, it could be consistency. It could be consistency. And you got to I think Megatron has to be the guy there. If we're talking about consistency over the last decade, perhaps Smitty, he probably had a 6-7 year stretch where this guy was probably top 3 wide receivers in fantasy every year.
And plus Detroit had literally zero else there. And how sad is it that the Detroit Lions, and by the way, what they're doing now with Dan Campbell is legit, dude. He is a fun dude to watch. They're a fun team to cheer for. They've been in the gutter literally forever and a day. But the fact that they've had 2 absolute Hall of Fame players at the peak of their careers both decide to, like, you know what, I'd rather go like sell tasty cakes at Krauser's than play for this organization anymore. Barry Sanders leaves. Megatron leaves. If those 2 dudes would have stayed put, or at least maybe gotten traded for some value. Like, think about both of those guys left the exact same way at the time. A horrible organization, bad ownership, bad coaches, bad roster. But you lost Sanders and Megatron back to back in basically the peak of their careers, which sucks for all of us as football fans.
I mean, it's well established that Detroit is a poverty franchise. It's a poorly run organization. The guy who was at the helm for the last couple decades or decade or so was Matthew Stafford, and now he goes to LA, throwing balls to Cooper Kupp, kind of to bring it full circle there. I don't understand, Smitty, how you could say Cooper Kupp, one of the best fantasy receivers or whatever. Like, he had one great season. Before that, he was basically just Adam Thielen. Like, I would draft Adam Thielen and Cooper Kupp back to back in the draft, and they were fine, small guys who would just catch a couple passes here from mid quarterbacks, and that was it.
Yeah, but we're just talking about, like, basically like who exploded, who's like
I want to know longevity, Smitty. If you draft,
he doesn't have. I mean, trust me, I drafted Kupp in one of my. I'm in something like 11 leagues right now. I drafted Kupp in one of them first round because I was at like pick like 7. So at 7, you're like, all right, but am I thinking like, oh, he's gonna now go down again with his hamstring, and he now has to get like gel shots or whatever the heck he's doing to try to for his ham? You're like, he's killing me because the only other dude I have right now is CeeDee Lamb, but I'm relying on Dak Prescott, who's awful, to get him the ball. So it's a no-win situation.
Smitty, 11 leagues. How do you keep track of all of them?
I actually have somebody hired to do all this. Jake Pryor, my stepson, is actually the person who kind of like organizes all the leagues for me. I go in and just make the roster moves. I just have him do all the grunt work.
How much do you pay him?
What's that?
How much do you pay him?
I give him a roof over his head.
Food on the table.
I give him I give him a little cash for some Chipotle once in a while. Just keep the guy happy.
Smitty, looking at the season so far, who's your guy this year to take over fantasy football? Who's the league winner this year?
In terms of teams or like certain players?
No, give me a guy or give me a couple guys you like.
I mean, if McCaffrey stays healthy, you can't go wrong with McCaffrey. The problem again, like with him is, you got Shanahan, who's always like throwing in, like, because he's smarter than he is, thinks he is. So all of a sudden he's like, I want to I don't run him to the ground. So Mitchell, get in there for a carry or 2. Last year I was in some playoffs with my fantasy team and I got McCaffrey going. And then all of a sudden he's out for like 2 series in a row because I'm watching this guy Mitchell run around like an idiot. So McCaffrey's going to pay, I think, big time. Justin Jefferson is. I mean, you saw him last night. I mean, if he scores that touchdown instead of getting the ball knocked out, at the goal line, he still ended up with 28, 29 points. I mean, Justin Jefferson is a machine. And at the same time, they have a quarterback who just locks in on him and looks nowhere else. That's probably why Thielen was like, you know what, I'll go be a Robin someplace else down in Carolina because I'm not getting any love from Kirk Cousins. So Jefferson, I think, is going to be an absolute beast all season long. It's crazy, though. You watched last week, Chase didn't pretty much do anything. All the quarterbacks last week 1. I mean, you got your guy, Elias. Lamar didn't do anything, even though they won. Justin Hurts last week did. Jalen Hurts didn't do anything. Herbert maybe had the best numbers in a loss. He only went for like 24 or something like that. Like every quarterback, Josh Allen, nothing. So all the quarterbacks last week, all your high profile dudes, none of them panned out.
Well, again, I think it speaks to why quarterback is the arguably the least valuable position in fantasy football because
except for the dudes who snake all the running backs touches like Josh Allen.
Like Justin Fields.
Josh Allen gets near the 10, and all of a sudden he's like, he looks back. Those guys are just like, Christmas ornaments on a tree. He ain't doing anything with those dudes until like maybe, December 25th.
Well, exactly.
And he sees the end zone. He's like, see ya. I'm out from here.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we are out of time. This has been Gimme 5, the double shot edition with Smitty. Gentlemen, thanks so much for talking.
It's been real, man. You guys are the best. Rock on. Good luck this weekend in your games.